Hello and welcome to Kain and Company here on CBT News. Today I'm joined by a dear friend of mine, Jon Quade with CDK Global. And Jon and I are just going to talk about a variety of topics. So Jon, first off, thanks a lot for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, David.
Well, excellent. It's fun. You and I have traveled together quite a bit. And right now we're doing a General Motors tour. Could you tell us a little bit about that tour?
Yeah, it's really cool. It's an opportunity for us to get in front of a lot of dealers, which we don't always get to do, and kind of bring the factory right down to the dealership level where they can see what's going on and how to deal with consumers, not just now, but in the future too.
Cool. So if you're a General Motors dealer, what do they actually call the tour?
It's called the GM Compass Leadership Workshops. And so we hit 17 different cities. You know, you're hitting most of them,
Yeah.
if not all.
Yeah, I actually have the benefit of tag teaming with my friend Todd Smith, so it works out kind of nice. But you've actually taken a different tact with those meetings, and not only do you do leadership workshops in those, but you also do a kickoff session at the very beginning where you talk about kind of almost like a back to the future view. Tell us a little bit about some of the tidbits that you've picked up on that conversation.
That's really an interesting piece of it because we all know the business has changed dramatically over the years. And if you think back to how it used to be, and Back to the Future and that video they show with the flux capacitor and the timeline, it was 2015. That was the year they were going for. And we're past that, so we're actually already in the future. Our business is demanding that we take a new look at things because whatever got us where we are today will not take us where we want to be tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting. I think things that are false positives in the industry are when you see the volume of new vehicle sales, 17.3 million. I saw a lot of dealers last year were saying, hey, just ease off the gas. Business is pretty good. But there's a lot of challengers in the industry, and particularly the profit center challenges. Used vehicles, for example. We see dealers who are in a position to where they're in a market with a Carvana or CarMax is still fighting the good fight in a lot of markets. What's your view of how dealers are having to adapt, and do you feel like dealers are adapting fast enough?
Well, I'm not sure if there's ever a fast enough. I think, especially from a dealer's perspective, you always want it better and larger and more quickly.
Sure.
Executing it the right way, though, is really the key. We've seen a lot of organizations like Carvana, like BP, which is a peer-to-peer network that's out there now. We see a lot of those, and we don't want to take them too lightly because it's a trend in the marketplace. But I think the hand raiser surveys we see all the time, David, people saying, well, we're not going to do business with dealers anymore. Dealerships are going to be out of business in no time.
Yeah.
Those are hand raiser people who are not really buying cars. They're saying this is the way it should be. So I try to take it all with a grain of salt, but at the same time, we want to be mindful of what's going on in the industry so we can be on top of it. But yeah, we got to pay. I mean, Carvana did 1,500 vehicles last month. Wow. It's a big number.
Sure.
And so we got to pay attention to it.
Well, and then if you look at the erosion of the profit opportunities, when you see dealers who do business the right way, they tend to have a better gross margin. They have a higher retention rate. They retain their employees. So it seems as though that business model really proliferates to long-term strength and better endurance.
For sure.
Anything that strikes you about the future, and something we were kicking around earlier, is consumers hate test drives. And this virtual reality test drive that we were reading about just this week, just for the fun of it, what do you think of that idea?
So I got my new phone, and my new phone came with a VR headset.
Yeah.
So I tried it. It's pretty impressive, and I can watch movies with it or whatever, but it's a pretty amazing technology. I think we have to look at the why. Why do customers not like test drives? And I think a lot of it has to do with commitment level.
Yeah.
They're much more likely to buy, about double as likely to buy if they get behind the wheel of a vehicle, and customers know that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that headbutting that goes on, I think, David. We want them to get behind the wheel because we know our chances are better. They don't want to get behind the wheel because they feel too committed. But Today, with people only visiting 1.6 dealerships, the most recent studies say, before they buy something, we have to take every opportunity we can. So when we do get them in, I don't really want to diminish the impact by not putting them in a test drive. Here, put on these goggles and it'll be great. That's like walking the lot with your used car sheet.
Sure.
In the old days, how we used to do it.
Oh, come on, doesn't that still work?
Look at this blue Malibu, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, so it is fun to think about how retail has changed. And one of the things that you're really, you've convinced me over the years, your expertise in utilizing the phone connection, driving on the consumer's emotion with humility, confidence, product knowledge, and even humor to inspire people to come in. How come that's such a challenge for dealers? And I'll couch it this way. Whoever was the trainer of bad habits has to be the greatest trainer of all time, because they're everywhere and we can't shake them.
You're right. And it's funny, you and I talk about this all the time. And let's make it clear, we're not really complaining, because if we probably wouldn't have a job if people listened to everything we taught them.
Especially the first time.
Yeah, exactly. So that said, I think the reason that we have such a hard time with people on the phone is because they're invisible.
Yeah.
They're not in front of us. And so not just from a sales consultant perspective, but service departments as well. Managers, when they look at people who are on the phone, they don't actually see that person in front of them. So it's not like somebody who's not being helped when they're on the lot. Mm-hmm. It's a whole different animal. And taking them seriously is probably the biggest challenge, because we can't see them.
Yeah, so you teach me every time we're together, and what I'd love you to do is to give a gift to our viewing audience. What are good phrases, or a good phrase that you can almost count on to inspire someone to want to come to the dealership?
The first thing, it's a great question. The first thing is for us to handle it with enthusiasm. That's first and foremost. So you can say all the right things, but if you're not giving them the impression you're happy they called, then it doesn't matter what you say. So it has to start out with, hey, thanks for calling, or thanks for waiting. This is John in sales. How may I help today?
Yeah.
And that may seem like it's over the top a little bit, so people go, oh, right, like you're actually going to say it like that. But you have to, and then it allows you to get to the next step. No matter what they ask for, I've always taught to say, I'll be happy to check on that for you, David. Let me ask you this. And then immediately into a questioning posture.
Yeah.
If you're asking and they're answering, they're a lot more likely to follow the path when it comes time to ask for the appointment.
Well, so it's interesting that you say it that way, because I always thought you should just pick up the phone and go, sales, David. It is funny, though, when you bring about enthusiasm, because if we're happy, if we come in and we lock into our position and we're happy and we can convey that to the consumer, they kind of embrace that. And it really is a big time in their life. If they had a wreck, hey, I at least get to get a new car. If they're getting a new car because the old one's wearing out, they're excited. Yeah. And we very rarely see enthusiasm that mirrors the consumer. So the consumer, if we go into facts, they go to facts. But if we lead them, and we like to say it, control yourself, and you'll really control the call.
Amen.
That's and I think it's totally accurate. I love when you say amen. That makes me feel like a Southern preacher.
You look like a Southern preacher.
Being from Kentucky.
I mean that in a good way.
So let's switch gears just a little bit, and we'll talk about fixed operations. Sure. When you drive up to a car dealership, you see these beautiful showrooms, but there's this big metal building on the back, and we know that's the service department, maintenance and stuff. But if you go to a website, where's the service department? You've talked about it. Share some ideas on how to improve that for our viewers.
Sure, happy to. And one of the big things we talk about, David, is how almost, in fact, for a lot of dealerships, over half of their business that visits their website is not there for sales. They're there for fixed ops. So whether it's to set an appointment, or whether it's to look at hours for the service department, or even just look at specials, we have to be mindful that they're not there to buy cars. So it does us no good with those folks to have awesome inventory and great vehicle details pages, and those are fine for somebody who's looking for sales, but you need to be able to cater to people who just want to set an appointment and be done with it. it's kind of the same thing as face-to-face. When somebody comes on the lot, yeah, we have those big, awesome showrooms, but we also want to make sure it's easy for them to find out where to take their vehicle when they're in for service. We got to do the same thing on our website.
There's no question. Now, I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell us about CDK Global, what you guys are up to, and kind of give us a view of what your company's focusing on this year.
Sure. We work with, as you know, over 10,000 dealer websites, and it's not just about operating a website. In fact, that's a small part of what we do. A big part of what we do is drive traffic to those websites. Because let's face it, if we're not getting the people to the sites for you, then unfortunately, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to be engaging with you. And we don't just do it at a dealership level. We try to do it at an LMA level and even with manufacturers. So the real secret today is being able to track people no matter where they go and what they engage in online. If you go to Amazon.com, you get out there and let's say you went out and looked at shoes yesterday. If you leave there without buying shoes, the first thing
you're going to... Did you know I was looking at shoes yesterday?
Of course I did, because
CDK
Amazon and I have sort of a relationship. They let me know.
Cool.
And so if you go there, don't buy the shoes and then come back to Amazon, they're going to show you shoes the next time you come there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're trying to do, except without the username and password for some of our dealer websites, allowing you to deliver a personalized consumer experience when they're on your website, just like it would if they pulled into the service drive, for example.
So literally 360 degrees, so pre-purchase, during the purchase process, and then post-purchase.
You said it perfectly. It's a cyclical process that we have to look at. I don't care where consumers enter the cycle. If they enter it buying accessories, great.
Sure.
If they enter the cycle coming in for an oil change, great. No matter where we get the opportunity, we want to encourage them to stay within that cycle. And that's really the chance that we'll have to get a long-term relationship with that consumer.
Awesome. Well, Jon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to be here.
I know if you come out to the General Motors Compass Leadership Workshops, you'll get to listen to Jon and learn a lot more about what General Motors is doing for their dealers and how CDK Global really pioneers a lot of the new changes in the marketplace. So thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you next time here on Kain & Company.